Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and man, do we ever have an exciting review today, because it has been so long since we last had a Wild Past release, and I am so hyped to actually have a new one now, as well as more on the way. But so far, we only have one that's actually released, which you can see is the 1/20th scale Scutosaurus and Kotlassia. Now, I'm not too familiar with the Kotlassia. I don't know even if I'm saying the name correctly. I think I am, but if I am not, please feel free to correct me in the comments section. But I'm obviously very familiar with the Scutosaurus, and again, we obviously can tell it's 1/20th scale. And look at the gorgeous artwork here on the front of the box. Talk about a beautiful image of the species. You can obviously see the Kotlassia kind of in the water here, or coming up out of the water onto that little area, which we obviously have in the model itself. And then, of course, our Scutosaurus standing nearby. Talk about one incredibly cool image right there. Up on the top, you basically have a little size chart as well as some information on the species right there. And then over here on the side, you can see that we will have a Majungasaurus coming very soon, as well as a Tethys, which is actually already out, and I have already reviewed those here on the channel. It does say also available, but I don't think the Majungasaurus is quite available yet, but should be very soon. And then, well, we've got some information here on the underside. And then, of course, you can follow them on Instagram, which I highly recommend doing. Of course, scan the QR code there. But that's pretty much it. Oh, no, it's not. We actually have an image here on the back of the box as far as the figures themselves go. And you can see, again, that this contains 2 figures, which you see right there. So, I'm really excited to check these out with you guys. Let's pop this box open and do just that. So here is our Kotlassia, as well as our Scutosaurus, and it is honestly few and far between when we get a Scutosaurus figure, so straight away I am very excited about that. Let's move this down a little bit, get a nice side view of both of these models. But I am very excited to have a Scutosaurus. We do have, some out, not very many. Of course, we have like a Mattel version. There's also the Safari LTD version, which is long retired. There's probably more potentially that I'm forgetting off the top of my head. But as far as a Kotlassia goes, I don't ever recall there being a figure of that before. I mean, it is possible, but I don't really recall. Regardless, again, both of these figures do look really cool here straight out of the box, so let's jump to a closer look and we'll check them out from there. So, beginning with the Kotlassia figure, which you can see is pretty small, but again, it's not super tiny. If you lead up here into the figure itself, you can see we've got well, there we go, if my camera would focus on it. We've got a pretty nice looking head sculpt, and you can see they've done a very good job as far as actually applying some paintwork to this. I will say that this is probably the best paintwork when it comes to realism that I have seen so far from Wild Past, so that's definitely a plus. They've obviously improved in their time away when it comes to the paint applications of their figures. You can see that we have kind of like looks like a dark wash applied to the Kotlassia, which is a very nice touch. You can also see the mouth sculpted out there, as well as the nostrils there, and the eyes. The eyes are painted with what appears to be a yellow and a black pupil, but they're so small, it's really quite hard to actually pick up on that aspect. You can obviously see that what we have here basically replicates what we see on the front of the box, as the Kotlassia is kind of coming up out of the water and kind of like crawling up onto what appears to be a tree of some kind that's been laying in there, or a log. Almost looks like it's a little bit mossy when it comes to the greens that are kind of over top of it. And both the texturing to the log as well as the Kotlassia itself looks really good. You can see how the tail leads out and curves down here around to the side, and then again another nice profile here over on the other side of the figure. Again, it is really, really well done when it comes to both the sculpting and paintwork aspect. They've definitely added in a bit more color to this than I've seen in the past from Wild Past, and again, definitely an amp up when it comes to the overall quality of the model. It is a really cool figure to be included here with the Scutosaurus. Then we bring up our Scutosaurus itself, and this as well looks absolutely fantastic when it comes to the actual sculpt in detail. When you get nice and close, look at how good that skin texture looks. It absolutely pops on the Sculpted is so vibrant here. It really does look very good. As you lead up here into the face, you can see the eyes are painted with what appears to be kind of the same similar yellow that we actually have here for the kind of bumps moving along the head of our Scutosaurus, and then a black pupil. Now, at first look, I almost thought, I don't really like the fact that they've painted the eye the same color as that area, but it's actually pretty common to see things like that. So, on second thought, I actually think I do kind of like that. Normally, I would say, well, I'd rather a different eye color that would kind of make the eye stand out a little more, but at the same time, I feel like that might be something that is pretty natural overall, so I guess I actually do kind of like it a little more than I thought. But you can see we have some nice dark greens leading up here, some nice lighter tones here in the face, kind of like light browns mixed with a little bit of greens. And then you have this lighter green that kind of follows along a lot of the bumps and stuff here on the head of our Scutosaurus. You can get a nice shot there in the front of the face. You can see the mouth sculpted out there. A little bit of sloppiness or something here to the paint right on the tip of the snout. I don't know what that is exactly. I would think it's probably paint that was a little bit sloppy and not necessarily like a chip of the paint or anything like that. But it doesn't, take away from the figure too much. I could probably touch that up if I really wanted to. But you can see again what the head sculpt looks like over here. Really nice bumpy skin texture as you move along. Once you move back here, you can see some nice wrinkling and creasing in the neck to the Scutosaurus. Really smooth transition, I would say, down from that darker coloration, the darker green to the browns. It's a little, like, you can obviously see it's kind of abrupt moving down the arm, but when you move down the neck and transition down, that's pretty nice looking. You can also see some definite heftiness to the model overall. It's obviously a pretty thick animal, which you can see displayed in the sculpt nicely. You can also see the legs are sculpted pretty nicely, though I do see, again, I don't know if that's paint scuffs or maybe a little of the paint application, kind of like the yellowish tone, maybe that's kind of like dry brushed over. I'm not too sure. It's hard to really tell, but there is a little of something going on there. But as you move down here, there's definitely some more of that on that one nail, which again would be an easy touch up for me. But I will say that definitely could have been a little bit nicer as far as the application goes, because again, I'm not too sure if that is a paint scuff or if it's just a little sloppiness with the paint. But in the grand scheme of things, I really don't think it takes away from the figure, especially considering we just don't get Scutosaurus models near enough. But as you move down into the foot sculpt, you can see some very nicely sculpted toes, nicely sculpted out and painted nails with a nice blackish tone. As you move up here into the side, again, the skin texture looks really good. You have a nice combination of the greens as well as these kind of like brownish tones moving up, and you can kind of see some of the browns kind of creeping through the greens as well in certain areas, and then of course more of those yellows sort of highlighting what appears to be like some scoot-like scales here moving down along the side of the Scutosaurus. You can see some wrinkles to the skin right in front of the thigh back here, nice muscle definition as well. You can very clearly see that our Scutosaurus was just recently walking along, appears to have just kind of stopped and is maybe surveying the landscape a little bit. You've also got some very bumpy skin texture as you move up here into the top of the Scutosaurus. Moving down, you can see the hip bone right there, the nice short tail as well for the Scutosaurus. And then as you lead here to the underside, you can even see a cloaca is sculpted out right there. And then as you move along the underside, the skin texture looks really good. And like I said, there's a nice dark wash, just like we saw with the Kotlassia, that you can see here on the underside of the Scutosaurus as well, which is definitely a really nice touch. So overall, this is absolutely beautiful, honestly. Like, I'm really excited to see such a massive increase in the quality of the Wild Past line, and just generally excited to now have a new Scutosaurus in my collection. As far as sizes go, when it comes to the Scutosaurus, you are looking at right around 4 inches or a little bit over 10 centimeters. And then height-wise, the back of the head's probably the highest point. I would say closing in on 1 3/4 inches, but not quite there, or a little under 4.5 centimeters. And then for the Kotlassia, we're not going to measure the animal itself, we'll measure the entire thing. So from the end of the little base it's on here to the snout, you're looking at about 6 centimeters or around 2¼ inches. Height-wise, you're really not going to get much. It doesn't even reach an inch, so about 3/4 of an inch or around 2 centimeters. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Kayakasaurus, Robert Muldoon, and the Collect Day human being here next to our wild past Scutosaurus and Kotlassia, and you can see that, again, they're fairly small overall. Definitely not, massive looking figures. I wouldn't expect them to be, but at 1/20th scale, they're still at least, fairly decent for the species that they are. We've also got a Mattel Velociraptor and Dilophosaurus here next to our Wild Past set for yet another comparison. And we've still included the Kotlassia here, but we've moved it to the other side because here is a comparison between the Wild Past version of the Scutosaurus and the Safari LTD version that is out already. So if you do happen to own the Safari LTD version, this should help to give you a pretty good idea of the size of the Wild Past version. And then there is obviously going to be a pretty big size difference here between the Mattel version of the Scutosaurus and the Wild Past version, but I mean, that was pretty much to be expected. You can obviously see the Mattel version is quite a bit larger. And then, in my old age, I happen to have forgotten somehow about the Kenner Scutosaurus, which I decided to bring in for a comparison as well. We've also got a comparison with the one that started it all for Wild Past, as we actually have their Protoceratops here for a comparison next to their newest release, again, the Kotlassia and Scutosaurus. And then for one final comparison, just because it is a figure that released fairly recently, we have the Safari LTD Esteminosuchus here next to the Scutosaurus, just to help give you an idea of the size in case you happen to have the Safari LTD figure. So this brand new release from Wild Past, the 1/20th scale Kotlassia and Scutosaurus, are both really cool figures. Definitely excited to see Wild Past back at it again and, creating brand new figures for us all to enjoy. And I think they may have done their best figure yet so far with this release, because it is nice to see a bit of a size difference here, because the other figures were a bit on the smaller side, and it is now really exciting to see a larger figure being released. It's not huge, but it's definitely bigger than what we've had previously. And I think overall they're very cool species choices, and definitely some that I think many people are going to be excited about owning and including in their collection, because it's not something we get very often, especially the Kotlassia, which is a really cool figure. Obviously, it's just kind of chilling there on a log, nicely sculpted, nicely painted overall, and a very cool little addition to this set. And it's also a species that I absolutely do not have in my collection at all and have never seen a figure of, so of course I'm really excited to be able to add that one to my collection. But in my opinion, the most exciting aspect for this set, of course, is the Scutosaurus, because as I said, it's another species we just don't get, and it's a species that I am very fond of. They're just so unique and so different, and I think that's one of the reasons why I've always been such a big fan of the Scutosaurus. And yet again, they've done a very good job as far as this one goes. Really nice sculpt, nice paint apps as well. Again, nice naturalistic, nothing overly flashy. Absolutely the type of coloration I could see this animal being, which is also a huge plus. And the actual paint application on the figure, again, is a bit more advanced than what we had seen on the older Wild Past releases. And one of the things I think I'm most excited about in general is seeing the addition of washes and stuff to this newest set of figures, because I just feel like it really does amp up the realism overall and adds a little more extra life, and just in general kind of creates a higher quality figure, which of course is never a bad thing. Cannot wait now, after actually having this one, to see the upcoming Majungasaurus as well, especially because that is one of my favorite species of dinosaur of all time. So very excited to be able to add a really cool Wild Past version to my collection. But again, this is an absolutely epic release from Wild Past. If you are interested in picking one of these up for yourself, I will include a link in the description to where you can do that. And this will also be coming to Everything Dinosaur at some point in the near future as well, hopefully. So you'll be able to pick it up there. But if you want to get it right now, make sure you check that link in the description, and you can go order this right away and add it to your collection. And also like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.